everybody. Welcome to today's edition of the Gamut Network. I have an incredibly accomplished woman on the show today that you may recognize because she has certainly been in the public eye. Rajee, welcome to the show. It's so wonderful to have you, and I love seeing you.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad to be here with you. Well, I mean, virtually.
But this is, I'm at least grateful that we have this. Can you share with our audience about your story, your disability, what life has been like to lead you to where you are today?
Absolutely, yes. So I was born in India. I was adopted, and I had, contracted polio in India. And fortunately, I was adopted by an amazing and wonderful, loving family that I'm incredibly blessed to be a part of. And I just know that, so many people, I don't think they have the kind of a relationship they do with their parents and their family. And I couldn't be more grateful that I have that, and it's such a blessing. So, I think that so much of who we are and who we become is from our upbringing. And so my parents, they poured so much love and care into me, and I carried that with me throughout my life. But obviously as a child, before I was adopted, because I was adopted, I came to the United States on July 4th, 1990, and I was 6 years old. So anyway, so it's funny because, it's America's Independence Day, but in a lot of ways it was my own Independence Day. So,
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So it's a big day for me, and a very special day. So I think, I always kind of, even as a child, I had a spark in me, and that really has carried me through my whole life. And even the nun who, she actually was the head nun that would go to overcrowded orphanages and, pick out children that she saw something in. And so she told my parents that she was like, when I saw Rajee, she had this like spark inside of her and this sparkle in her eyes. And she was like, I knew she was going to do big things. So.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So you're 6 years old. When the nun saw the spark. Physically, from having polio, what was happening? What were the issues?
So for me personally, I mean, polio affects people differently. So for me, it affected my legs. So predominantly my right leg. I do have some muscle in my left leg. So it attacks your nerves and your muscles. And so for me, I just, my muscles completely atrophied. And so as I got older and I had surgeries, I was basically also my tendons were also extremely tight. And so my legs were, they weren't straight. And so I had to go through various, I went through like a major surgery when I first came to the United States. And so my parents immediately made sure I got medical care. And, I'm very fortunate. I was in the hospital for a little bit, and I was in contraction. That was incredibly painful. I don't know, how many people have to go through that kind of pain, but I had to be turned every, few hours or whatever, just to make sure that, and I remember it to a degree, but it was so long ago that it just was, it's like, oh yeah, I had surgery, and I've had, a couple surgeries since. And so, so I think that, medical attention and medical care was very helpful in that, because it allowed me to have the independence to walk with my braces and my crutches. So I do wear braces on my leg when I'm out and about in my home. I fortunately have enough strength that I don't wear them in the house. But so I think, and as a child, then growing up with that, I think so much of why I didn't feel like I was bullied or anything like that, because I hear so many stories from, I've even gotten
a few on the show. which is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It just will never be
Yeah.
anything but heartbreaking.
Yeah. And so, even after I got to a level, where I felt like I was making a difference, and I had people through my social media platform or when I went and spoke, that came up to me and it was just heartbreaking to hear these stories of these children that were being bullied, because honestly, like, I am very fortunate. I didn't have to really experience that. I mean, a little bit of teasing here and there, but like, I think also I just have a very tough skin. But I, went through that awkward phase of just not feeling like I fit in. But I think it's even more magnified when you're a person with a disability, because it's like, okay, nobody else looks like me, and how do I fit in, and how do I do these things? And I was really fortunate that, my school was very inclusive, and for instance, my PE teacher, he figured out ways that he could really include me in those activities, and so I never felt left out in that sense. But I think, for me, it really hit me as I became a teenager, and then after that. And that's because, so much of society really puts an emphasis on your looks, and, that's just the way it is. And so, like, I was flipping through magazines and watching TV and not being able to relate, and being like, are there not people with disabilities? Typically, being home after school in high school one day and watching Oprah, and she's definitely one of my inspirations.
I mean,
and
she generally is the answer to all.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you're feeling down, watch Oprah. Yeah,
Solve the problem in one episode.
Yeah, Oprah's
Perfect.
problems.
Yeah.
So then, I remember thinking to myself, like, I didn't see myself out there, and I didn't feel seen and represented. And so I remember saying to myself, I'm going to make a difference. And, I truly,
sparkle. I think that's the sparkle that the nun saw in you, in that, during that time that's so difficult, teenage years with nothing, no issues. Teenage years can be challenging, but put the layer of disability on top of that, and it's even more challenging. And you could have definitely gone, one of two ways. You could have gone the way that I know that you went, that we're going to share, of having that sparkle and wanting to make a difference. Or you could have gone the other way and say, why me? Poor me. I don't. And
I've definitely been there before.
I'm still there. I still have moments of, why my son, why our family, that. And I think that is completely the course of life and natural, but you picked yourself up even from those moments, and forged on. Do you think that that came from you internally, from the amazing support that you had from your family, or a combination of both?
I mean, it was definitely a combination of both, but I think looking back, I think so much of it was myself internally and digging deep, because you can have all the support out there, but until you really go inward and find that strength and find whatever it is inside of you that makes you keep going every single day, despite whatever circumstance you're in.
I love that. And actually, one of our guests said the most unbelievable quote, that if you cannot go outside, go inside.
Yeah, I love that.
Isn't that beautiful? Doesn't that just say it all?
Yep.
So magnificent, but it's exactly, what you're talking about, that you found it inside. And that is critically important to forging through some, I'm sure, very challenging time emotionally and physically.
Yes, absolutely.
For you. So now you've gotten through high school, and tell me about it. Did you go to college? Tell me about from that point on, because I want to get to certainly the amazing trailblazing efforts that you have been a part of.
Yeah, so I made a decision that I was going to create visibility for disability for people with disabilities in the media. So I use the hashtag a lot of times in my posts, disability in media. And I told myself that. I said I was going to create, that visibility, and I didn't know how. I started out as an art major in college, but then after my first semester, I switched to broadcast journalism, and I went with that. And I said to myself, because I minored in broadcast journalism and majored in art, and then I switched it around. And because I realized that was where I was going to make that difference. And so my degree is in broadcast journalism, and I didn't necessarily go the route of being a reporter, but I knew that those skills that I learned obviously carried me through and still has. And I dealt with a ton of rejection, and I think that's the part that is probably the most painful for anybody, but then even more so for a person with a disability, because we have to try even harder to kind of prove ourselves and prove that, like, no, I'm capable of this, I can do this. And it's also like a teaching experience too, because there's so many stereotypes or misconceptions about people with disabilities. And a lot of times, I think it really comes down to people being willing to learn and to educate, and the person who has the disability educating other people on their capabilities and, how they go about life. And even for me, on sets, doing video shoots, in commercials, that kind of stuff, or being on set on the production side of things, all those things, like, I had to be the person that educated other people on my capabilities and what I could do. And, I remember going to an audition, and it was an audition where I think it was a director, he was in the audition, and he asked me, like, and I'm glad he asked me this, actually, because people don't know unless they ask. And so I think so many times there's a stigma, like, oh, you can't ask because that's inappropriate. No, I'd rather you ask. And I think most people feel that way.
And ask instead of staring. Ask because you're curious.
Yes.
Ask because now you will be educated for the next time that you deal with somebody. So I'm curious what he asked you.
Exactly. Yeah. So basically he asked, like, so he asked what was my limitations on my mobility of my movement, because this particular scene, the idea was, like, I think that you needed to kind of, not necessarily like run, but kind of like take a few steps towards this act that was going on. It was kind of like a circus scene or something like that. And so I said, well, I can't run, but I can, take, a few, and I think this was them wondering, like, how much I could move with my crutches versus not. And I can take a few steps without them. But it's, and again, I'm glad he asked me that, because otherwise he would have known. Right. And so I ended up landing the principal role in that commercial. And, so it's just, I think so much of what you get in life is what you put out there. And, all my accomplishments, it's an energy field too, like, you can't be afraid to just go after your goals and dreams and to ask. And I mean, even how I connected with you years ago, and so I was like, oh my gosh, and that wasn't an accident coming across your organization, because for me personally, I was annoyed. I was like, why isn't there people with disabilities that are in magazines, on runway shows, in movies? And I mean, there was a little bit, but not to the extent that it is now. And I think, I just hate that there is this like negative stigma that, like, that people with disabilities are unattractive or are, like, not cognitively functional, or, it's like, no, we're the same as everybody else. We just have limitations on, how we're mobile, or whatever it is, like, whether you're communicating or whatever the disability is. But, it's like, let the person tell you what they're capable of and educate you. And there's just, like, so many unnecessary stigmas that could just be avoidable if people just were willing to be more aware and
Absolutely. And you hit on so many important themes of what you just said that I want to make sure that we just kind of go back and reiterate, because they're so critically important and truly the reason why we have this show, to really highlight that people with disabilities are people. People with their disability. You are a gorgeous, vivacious young woman who has accomplished a lot and still has a lot more to accomplish. So one thing I want to kind of pivot to, and I think this is going to be very important to people watching, certainly young girls that are not teenagers yet and are about to go on that journey, that they can see somebody like you in the public eye, in what you're going to tell us about. That, do you think that that would have changed your perception if seeing people with disabilities in our mainstream media back when you were younger? I can only imagine how that would have translated to you, your younger self, and to others that are currently young. Elaborate a little bit more on that, because I think people don't really understand the profound effect that it has. I mean, me on a completely ridiculous level, but when I was younger, there was very few redheaded, curly, freckly faced people that were, was blonde hair, blue eye, feathered hair. That was beauty in the world. So I think I can only imagine what it would be like, to have a physical difference and not seeing anybody that looked like you.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, growing up, if I had seen somebody that looked like me, it would have made a huge difference. And it's like, everybody has a story. Everybody is a human being. We all come from the same place, but we all have such beautiful experiences and life stories to tell. And so I think that, had I seen myself, or not myself, but somebody that looked like me in magazines or TV or, runway or whatever, it would have definitely been different, because I would have been like, oh my gosh, like I can be this person, or I can be whatever it is. It doesn't have to be a model or actor or, anything like that, but it would have put something inside me that I think would have been like, oh my gosh, a doctor or a teacher or a nurse or whatever, like a scientist, whatever, and so I would say that, I think that having the ability now to have that impact on young girls and to be that role model has really been so incredibly rewarding for me, because I think that, if I had those role models when I was young, it would have cut down on my insecurities. It would have cut down on my internal anxiety, however that manifested. I think the biggest thing is self-esteem and confidence, right? So like for me personally, I had to work at building, and my friends all joke with me. They're like, God, you have like perfect teeth and perfect hair and perfect skin and whatever, and so, and, and I appreciate it. Thank you. So, but it's, or, long eyelashes, whatever it is. So it's just like, it's one of those things that, there's a level of ourselves that, that like where physical is, or what you see on the outside is very surface level. But then it's like, when you really dig deep and get to know somebody and get to know their story and get to know their heart, and like that exudes inside of you. If granted, like not everyone is blessed, I guess, with, amazing hair and teeth or a smile or whatever, but like find whatever it is that internally, and I say this all the time to people, I'm like, if that's like, you're an amazing cook, or, you're great at doing cartwheels, whatever it is, like, find that and then use that. And it's your gift. And so for me, I think it's interesting because over the years, I think whether you realize it or not, the universe is constantly telling you what your gift is. And so I truly believe, as a young child, that spark, it came out in my smile, in the way that I communicated, in the way that I showed love and kindness. And so, those are all things that are huge and like so important to know about yourself and to find that, because how you treat yourself is incredibly important. And what you think of yourself is what really matters, because deep down inside, whatever that is that you internalize and you feel about yourself is how other people are going to perceive you. So I think that so much of my confidence and how I present myself in the world, and how other people see me. I mean, I get told all the time, like people are like, oh my gosh, you're so strong, you're so beautiful, you just exude confidence. And it's like, well, yeah, because I worked at that for myself.
And so can you, right? To the other person.
Exactly.
You have that possibility as well. And I think that it is really something that needs to be discussed more, that everybody has that power, and that is certainly something that you are absolutely exuding, but you are also exuding it publicly and in our mainstream media. So can you share with us some of the unbelievable accomplishments that you have been a part of, campaigns that you've been in? I really want to show people that not only do you believe it internally, but you're sharing it externally.
Yeah, so I think it does start internally with what you truly believe in. And if you believe that you are capable of incredibly amazing things, it's going to happen for you. And you have to spend your day doing whatever it is to really believe that internally, whether that's, visualizing it, meditating on it, just thinking about it in a positive way constantly. Like I knew that I was meant to make a difference in media, because it was a constant thought in my head constantly. Like, and that's the thing, I think I was trying to get at earlier, like whatever it is that is always like a constant thought or a constant nagging in your heart or in your mind, that is what you're meant to do. And so for me, I, went to college for broadcast journalism. I graduated. I got tons of rejections, like, no. It was constant no. I went for interviews. I interviewed at TV stations and advertising companies, and and now I look back, and obviously, and even during that time, I remember even my mom saying like, well, she had such a beautiful way to word it, and it was something like, it's not a rejection, it's a redirection, and or something
like that. Yes.
And so I think that the one thing that I will tell people is that I think that being rejected is, it's painful, and if you can just get over that somehow and tell yourself you're better, or the world is gonna bless you with something that is in alignment and that is even better for you, then it's gonna happen. Because that's the thing, is I wasn't meant to, be at a TV station reporting about, I don't know how much corn grew or something, you know what I mean? Like, and so then I took all of that, and, I ended up, and again, I really believe everything happens for a reason. So my senior year, I was interning at NBC, and I was in charge of opening all the press kits for whatever companies that would send them. And one of the companies was American Eagle, and they were announcing the launch of their sister brand, Aerie. And I was like, no way, this is the same as my last name. How cool. I want to be a model for
this. Meant to be.
And it, and it was crazy. And that was, my senior year of college that happened. And it just was a constant thing. I think Victoria's Secret was the only really like mainstream intimate apparel line, and then obviously Aerie came through, and I loved the way that Aerie has branded themselves in you know, not airbrushing their models and just celebrating the true, real, authentic person that we all are. And so that brand obviously really resonated with me and who I was. And so, you know, I loved that Aerie was a brand that I really resonated with. And I was like, I really want to model for them. And so I actually like reached out to corporate and I was like, how do I become a model? And they're like, well, you have to have an agent. And so I was like, great. And so actually, I think at the time I did have an agent and I did tell my agent, like, I want to model for this company. And it wasn't because of that happened. It was, again, just me putting it out there and the universe, you know, coming back and being like, this has been on your mind. You're going to make a huge impact and difference. But it all had to do with timing as well, right? Because I had to get to a point where I was really confident in my skin and who I was, and in order for me to be on a billboard in Times Square for this brand. And so I remember so how that came about is they, you know, posted a casting call, and I was actually about to like head out for a friend's birthday party, and it was the last day that they were submitting or accepting submissions for this casting call. So I put together a video really quick. I sent it in, and like 2 weeks later, I get an email and it was like, congratulations, you know, you've been selected for the Aerie bra campaign. And so I was like, I read the email like 10 times because I was like, wait, is this for real? And keep in mind, like, this was I mean, it wasn't like the most first major thing that I had done, because I had already like been in a national commercial. I had done other things, you know, and projects and whatever. So it wasn't like, oh my God, this is like, you know, the first thing. So, but for me, I knew that was a huge accomplishment, because I finally got to a point where I think, especially for females, like, first of all, females in general, whether you have a disability or not, you want to be confident in your skin, and you want to feel beautiful, and you want to feel sexy. And so I think that this was one of those things where I was like, oh my gosh, like, I am good enough. I am, you know, just as beautiful as Giselle or whatever, you know? And so, so when I went and I was accepted and I did that campaign, I knew that was a huge turning point for me, because I was, again, I was, you know, the visibility was there. I was, you know, obviously breaking the glass ceiling and showing that people, you know, like I have scars on my legs. I have, you know, from my surgeries, and just, you know, it's just one of those things where it's like, regardless of what you look like physically, you're still capable of incredible things and accomplishing incredible things. And at the end of the day, you are worthy, and you have a story, and you're powerful, and nobody's gonna know you better than yourself. And so you have to be the one to tell your story, and to have other people see it through, you know, your eyes and your smile and how you experience life. And that's what I think makes our world so beautiful, because we all have different life experiences, and we all experience it through our own, you know, pain and struggle and hardships. And, you know, it's just, I mean, and our triumphs too, right? I mean, I think that that's what's so beautiful about all this, is that, you know, when all that happened, I had a lot of, you know, support and love from, you know, my friends, my family, and strangers. And then I think the impact that made, I had people reaching out being like, thank you so much for being a role model and doing this, because now my daughter or my son can see somebody that looks like them, and they feel seen and heard.
Absolutely. And what was it like, even just for you personally? Did you have that moment of being in Times Square and looking up at the billboard?
Yeah, it was really surreal. It was
holy cow. That's me up on a billboard in Times Square. Did you have that holy cow moment?
I did. No, for sure. I mean, that, like, you know, I think I remember getting goosebumps, and just like, I got teary eyed, and I just was like, I mean, obviously, like, I got a huge smile on my face, and just, I felt like I had finally made it. I had finally accomplished what I was out there to do. And I know I'm going to accomplish so much more, but for me, having that, that thought as a teenager of not seeing myself represented when I was flipping through, 17 magazine or whatever, Cosmo. And so, to finally have gotten to that point so many years later and to see myself and know that I'm making a difference and creating visibility in the media, for people with disabilities and women of color, so it was huge. It just like, it's really like, you can't really explain that moment because it's just such a beautiful moment inside my heart and who I am, and just a sense of accomplishment. And like I said, I think the biggest thing was I said to myself, even when I went into this, and I was like, no matter if I make a difference in one person's life or many people's life, I've accomplished a life goal.
Absolutely. So now you were a part of something enormous. What are you working on now?
So, well, I'm currently, I work for Toyota on the auto show circuit. But I also, so I'm representing Toyota. But I also am, just working on my own stuff. I am still, agency represented. I still am doing auditions. I mean, it's a little tough right now because of, the current situation. But
back in action before you know it.
Yes. So, but also like, I think for myself personally, I'm working on, creating more content. I realize that people need to hear my story and just how I go about, each and every day. And so for me, I'm just trying to like figure out, and life is a constant journey, and I don't have all the answers, and you don't either, but it's just kind of like, you just flow with it, and you just, and a lot of times you put that energy out there and opportunities just happen. And, I think that like the universe will give you what, at what point you meet the universe, you know what I mean? So if you're not ready to take that leap of faith, if you're not, whether that's, I don't know, in your work, in relationships, in your, whatever, anything. And so, so it's just like, you have to really go inward and just find whatever it is that drives you, and use that as your fuel to, accomplish whatever it is that you want in your life. Because if you had asked me, back then, or if you had told me back then, like when I was a teenager, oh yeah, you are going to be a big major model and on a billboard in Times Square, I would have been like, yeah, right. And so, to do that. And then also, it's weird to sometimes like see myself in a commercial on TV or on a YouTube, commercial or Hulu or whatever, like it's still surreal to me sometimes when that happens, or a print thing, or, whatever it is. And, I've worked from everything from like small little projects. I even have friends, my cousin, for instance, she was doing like a ongoing educational tool learning thing. And she was like, oh my God, I'm watching this thing, and boom, there you appear. And
I love it.
Yeah, so like, like industrial videos. And then I had another friend, she works for a grocery store, and they had to do some internal training. And she was like a girl I went to college with. And she was like, yeah, we're watching this video, and then boom, you appeared. And then like, I had one other instance where my friend, he is in pharmaceuticals, and same thing. He was browsing online on a website, and then he was like, this is you, right? And he like screenshotted and sent it to me, and I was like, oh yeah. And I hadn't even seen it. A lot of times, these small little, they're not necessarily small, but like, these projects, sometimes as the talent, you don't always see how they're
exactly
out there. But,
oh my God, I love it. Now I'm particularly enjoying how much you believe in the universe, and like you put out what you get back, because that leads in perfectly to the final question that I like to ask all of our guests, and that's the power of a vision board. And putting out there, whether it's actually a vision board or it's in your head, but really kind of putting out to the universe what you wish or hope or will make happen in your lifetime, what would that be for you? I know that you've already accomplished so much, but would it be somebody that you want to meet or work with, or something that you still are is kind of like your end all be all goal? What would that be?
So I've thought about this, obviously, and I mean, I would love to work with Oprah.
Me too. She's on my vision board, so we'll do it together.
Okay, we'll do it together.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, she's a huge inspiration to me. And then I would love to, eventually write a book. And also, I think another goal would be to, I think it would be super cool to, either produce or be in a movie or both. I think that would. A lot of people have said that my life is like the movie Lion, and it is in a lot of ways. And it's funny because when I was 10 years old, I remember telling my dad's coworker, I'm going to create a movie loosely based on my life. And then, so I do believe that's going to happen at some point, because over and over all throughout my years, I've been told by so many people, oh my gosh, you should, your life is a movie. You need to create this movie or write a book. And so those are two things that are, down the road. I would love for both of those things to happen. And I mean, I think, like I said, I think, I just want to be able to impact others and make a difference in others' lives. And I know I've already done that. And that, like I said, has just been so rewarding. And if I can continue to do that and inspire people, and really, I mean, it really is what I've learned is it's how you view life. So that's one thing. Like, you have to have a positive outlook on life. And I always have, because, we've all gone through struggles in our lives. And that's how I think as a human race, we all relate, is because we've all felt pain. We've all felt struggles and or dealt with struggles. And so all we can do is to share our story and hope that that is going to help another human, relieve the pain and suffering of another human being.
Well, you certainly did that by being on this show. And we are so incredibly grateful. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for your pearls of wisdom. If people want to get in touch with you or learn more about your story, what's the best way to tell them to connect with you?
They can connect with me on Instagram. Feel free to message me on there. I do post, content and stuff that I'm working on, whenever I feel inspired to do so. So
perfect. Well, this was an incredibly insightful conversation. Thank you so much for being a part of the Gamut Network. I am so grateful, and it was so wonderful to see you.
Of course. I'm so grateful to be on your show and share a bit of my story and hope it inspires other people.
It absolutely will. No doubt about that. If you would like to be on the show, please email us at talent@gamutmanagement.com and tell us why you'd be a great guest. Please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel at the Gamut Network and our social channels at Gamut Management. Rajee, thank you again so much. It was just an absolute joy.
Thank you. I appreciate it. You have a great day. And I don't know if it's sunny by you, but it's sunny here. So I'm going to go for a walk.
Yes. Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.